Hello and welcome back to Monstrosities. I am your host, Matt, and this is a very special live stream. As you know, many of you guys know, I am a bit of a book guy. You know, I've gotten rid of all my toys, and it's all about getting the books, right? And it's always a pleasure when new works come around and you get to learn new things about the history of this wonderful genre that we all love in terms of tokusatsu, right? It is a genre locked away behind language barriers and just decades upon decades of just time. I mean, so much can be lost. But some people are out there doing some amazing things and going and mining and bringing this information for the rest of us to enjoy, such as Mr. Carroza, who just came out with Godfathers of Tokusatsu Volume 1. 500 pages, okay? 500 pages of the history of Tokusatsu and the men and women who brought that to life. And he is here today, Mr. Jules Carroza. You're coming back. This is your grand return.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. How you doing?
Hanging in there. Thank you very much for doing this. Now, the last time we had you on here, we were talking about SF, which is also available over on Amazon.com, the Japanese Science Fiction Encyclopedia. Great book. Which, by the way, you so graciously signed for me, which I just got to point out there and flex that to my audience. But this was such a great read, and this is no slouch either. This is almost 500 pages. So when you got done with this monster, why did you suddenly sit down? Like, what inspired you to sit down and be like, you know what? I think I want to write another 500-page volume about this. Like, what was the genesis of Godfathers of Tokusatsu?
So the book really came about through like a bunch of different things, like a bunch of different mental avenues. I mean, I have made films myself. My most recent movie, well, actually no, I did make something after that, but my last big movie was a movie called Fungus, which I made like pretty much right before COVID happened, and then because of its subject matter, it was like a very Japanese inspired like apocalyptic film. And,
that's up on your YouTube channel, is it not?
Yeah, it is, and because of its subject matter, like once the pandemic started, like no one wanted to watch it. Because it's about like an apocalyptic pathogen, like wiping out humanity. So
it was very prophetic of you,
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
had my finger on the pulse in maybe some
right?
way, and so I have a bit of a background in filmmaking, and really am a cinemaphile. But tokusatsu filmmaking will always have like a special place in my heart. Like old school, Japanese special effects filmmaking, and I became particularly interested in it when. So the special effects end of these films, I became particularly interested in during research for SF, because I did a lot of research into Shinji Higuchi in particular.
Yeah.
I obsessively watched like all the behind the scenes of like his work on the Heisei Gamera films, and I mean, for one thing, that man is a genius. He even figured out how to fix the problem that water can't be miniaturized, and how he did that was just by using sand to in Gamera 3 he uses sand to stand in for rain droplets. He's an absolute genius. Like when it comes to putting together beautiful images, like visually stunning images, and so I kind of began just really down a long road of doing heavy amounts of research into tokusatsu filmmaking and the creation of these just really astounding images from it stretches all the way from Tsuburaya's mentor Yoshiro Edamasa to Shin Ultraman, which is out in Japan, now. So it really, is a long history that we're still feeling contemporarily, and I also ran. I used to run a Twitter account, which is still active. It still has like the old name because I can't change like the handle. But I used to run a GIF Twitter account. So I was doing a lot of like breaking tokusatsu sequences down into GIFs. So that really got me thinking about like how they fit together as images. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. Yeah, it's and forgive me if some of this is kind of like repeat from the previous interview, but at the same time, I think it's important to note, as a filmmaker yourself with a background in that world, I can totally understand why you would be so interested in the world of tokusatsu. You know what I mean? I don't know if you'd agree, but to me, it's like independent filmmaking at its finest.
It really is, yeah. Just like sort of this practical effects based filmmaking. And what's very interesting is that at least in Japan, tokusatsu is both a medium and a genre. It's marketed as a genre, but it's also a sort of national medium. I mean, Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi, they sent a proposal to the Abe administration's arts council to sort of calling for the preservation of tokusatsu as like a national art form. So and it's something. I mean, I feel like the Godzilla series getting released on Criterion is a good step in this direction. But as a cinemaphile who also loves these films, I want more mainstream cinemaphiles to see some value and merit, in these sorts of movies, and TV shows.
Yeah. No, I just absolutely. And, I was alluding to this when, I was just doing the intro here. This goes up to, forgive me, 1975? Is that what it ends at?
79, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
500 pages. And what's weird in the West is we have a lot of books about the history of Godzilla films, right? Not so much so about the history of Ultraman. Even less so about the history of, say, Kamen Rider or Super Sentai. Even less than that, some of these P-production hero shows and other Henshin hero shows that really came with that, tokusatsu boom of the 70s. You cover it all here. I mean, you practically leave no, stone unturned. With the Godzilla stuff, I can imagine that was pretty, easy to research and that kind of thing. But how was it diving into that, Ultraman and Rider and Sentai? Because like I said, and I could be mistaken, chat, people in the chat, hello, by the way. We say hello to the people in the chat. Thank you for coming in, guys. Ask Jules your questions, please. But as far as I know, your book might be the only tome out there, English-speaking tome, that actually chronicles this. Outside of Wikipedia or whatever, but an actual book form. How difficult was it?
I mean, it was really an exhaustive task. I did just a lot of research. I did a lot of internet research in Japanese. I found some materials in Japanese, which I had translated into English. This book has some new translations. And I also did a scour through of newspapers, including the Japan Times in New York City. So I did a lot of research on this. And it was, it was difficult, but also a lot of fun. The thing I think my book has, I mean, besides having a bit of a cinemaphile's perspective and a filmmaker's perspective, it contains a lot of information that is not really known in English. A lot of angles that really are only known by tokusatsu otaku in Japan.
Yeah, I was reading. I told you before the stream started. I haven't read the whole book. It's 500 pages. Sue me. It's been a real pleasure to read. But like, just as a refresher before jumping in here, I was reading like your entry on Kamen Rider. The 1971 series, and there was stuff in there that I'm just like, yeah, I had never heard before. Um, this might be a dumb question, but typically my audience is more on the kaiju side of things. Granted, we have people that enjoy all forms of tokusatsu, henshin heroes, that kind of thing. But can you maybe just explain kind of like why it's important to cover shows like Kamen Rider and Sentai? Because there's a lot of crossover with the people who worked on that with like the Godzilla series or any of the other kaiju movies, say from Dai or otherwise.
Yeah, that's really so. This book is sort of like the almost full story of like the greater tokusatsu industry, and it pretty much all goes back to Eiji Tsuburaya, and also his mentor Yoshiro Edamasa, who. But like really, it all kind of goes back to like the release of King Kong in Japan. After King Kong came out, we saw two pivotal early Japanese special effects films: The Great Buddha Arrival, directed by Edamasa, released in 1934.
Is that a cue that I should bring up the photo? By the way,
yeah.
Okay. Just tell me. I forgot that we had that. Just tell me when you want me to bring that up.
Yeah. So that film was one of the very first Japanese films to use miniature sets and also to use kind of like a monster suit kind of thing. Like the Great Buddha is like sort of an actor in like a monster suit, and also it was probably one of the first Japanese films to use optical printing as well. Though Tsuburaya would really he'd bring that to like a new height the following year. But it's fitting that Tsuburaya's mentor would be the first to really make like a monster movie in Japan. So first we have the Great Buddha Arrival, which I highly recommend Hiroto Yokokawa's film, his recent sort of like remake sequel. It's actually a really good piece of like independent cinema. It's like I was very impressed by it, particularly the sequence with Peggy Neal. So I like recommend that anyone who's interested in this film watch that. But so after The Great Buddha Arrival, the following year, Tsuburaya, Edamasa's protege, he was the director of photography for Princess Kaguya, which was another early Japanese film to use miniature sets, and it like revolutionized the use of like optical printing. The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter is a very famous story in Japan, and this film was like really pivotal in Tsuburaya's oeuvre, and it was believed to be lost. There's a picture of Princess Kaguya too of them like shooting like a castle miniature.
Gonna scroll through the pictures here. Sorry, everyone gets. Is this okay?
Yeah, I've got a lot of kind of interesting pictures we can talk about, but
a lot of really. Sorry, hold on. Is that it right there?
There we go. So that is that's like one of the very first miniatures in Japanese film history. Really,
it's beautiful.
Being lensed, and so really the whole tokusatsu medium really comes out of these two films. The Great Buddha Arrival and Princess Kaguya, and pretty much everybody who worked on like all of these franchises, they all came from sort of Tsuburaya's like tutelage to some degree. Some of them like more like indirectly. In the case of Kamen Rider, its art director was a man named Michio Mikami, who was an apprentice of Tsuburaya in the 1950s, and so he actually worked for like pretty much every Japanese special effects unit. He did like art direction. He did like, modeling. He made suits, and he also eventually did direction with X Bomber or Starfleet, which is a fantastic show. But Mikami was like one of the biggest creative forces on Kamen Rider, and he knew both Shotaro Ishinomori and Eiji Tsuburaya very well. Another pivotal figure in like tokusatsu lore, who's really not like well known in the West, is Nobuo Yajima, who there's a picture of like him with like one of the Message from Space space galleons. He's
right there.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. So that's Nobuo Yajima, who's actually like really one of Japan's greatest special effects directors. And he was really responsible for the sort of production infrastructure of like the tokusatsu ends of like the Sentai shows, which they're still using. Today his direct successor was Hiroshi Butsuda, who all of the special effects that you see in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, that's all Hiroshi Butsuda's work. And he's a figure that I both Nobuo Yajima and Hiroshi Butsuda are figures that I wish like more Sentai fans like knew about. They were pretty pivotal to the development of the franchise. And Yajima was really one of Japan's most influential special effects directors. He was a disciple of Keiji Kawakami, who was Tsuburaya's cameraman during the war, and he he wound up doing some particularly good work with like the Metal Hero franchise, on TV, which is covered more in Volume 2. But he founded in 1965. He founded the Tokusatsu Research Institute, which was kind of a sort of freelance firm, but also kind of like creative collective that made tokusatsu sequences for like films and television, and it's still active today. It's now headed by two of Yajima's proteges, Toshio Miike and Katsuro Inoue, who are both right hand men of Shinji Higuchi. So
if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they actually, both of those two that you just mentioned, were the ones who were the driving forces for the recent Inoue art exhibition.
Oh yeah, I meant to mention Yasuyuki Inoue is like an art director, genius, and I wish I was in Japan and could see the exhibit, but
don't we all? That exhibition looked amazing.
Yeah.
We had this from Doomzilla. I always love seeing the miniature sets. The amount of detail and effort in making them deserves a lot of credit, of which I agree.
And Uwe was like what he specialized in. He was his real genius was miniature engineering. There's a picture from Submersion of Japan of them creating the sinking arc. So right there.
Right there. Sorry.
In color. The color one.
Oh, the color one.
Yeah, right there. So that shows how they did those incredible sinking archipelago shots in Submersion of Japan, which Uwe would largely engineer. He was particularly good with engineering miniatures. He for in Submersion of Japan he put weaknesses on structural weaknesses into them, so they would sort of crumble and break apart in interesting ways.
Submersion of Japan, I will fight anybody. I think has the best special effects of any Toho film of the Showa era.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, the fact that they were still using stock shots from that 10 years later, there was times when I was pausing that. I'm like, wait a minute, is this a matte painting? Is this real? Like, it's amazing how, we always, Godzilla fans especially, and I come from that realm, we're always like, oh, the 70s, such a dark time and stuff. And yet here comes this movie similar to Prophecies of Nostradamus, where they had all that budget injected in there.
Yeah.
And you get to see these artisans, man, just like work their magic. And it is incredible. It rivals Hollywood stuff around that time.
It really does.
It exceeds it in some cases, I would say,
Better than the effects in Earthquake, which was released a year later.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something else. Like, I know this is kind of random, but I wanted to compliment you. You cover a lot of Teruyoshi Nakano, which I really like. I'm a big Nakano guy. Like, I think the guy needs way more credit than he deserves.
I am too. Yeah, I love like that. He's getting a little bit of like a reappraisal as a filmmaker, like because he. I mean, even like his like so-called like bad films like Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Megalon. I mean, they're still highly entertaining. And Submersion of Japan actually single-handedly revitalized tokusatsu filmmaking in the 1970s.
Is that available here in the U.S.? I mean, is it? And I understand it's a big deal over in Japan and stuff, but like, is this just my perception? Am I uneducated, just biased? Like, I feel like most tokusatsu fans don't talk about this movie, but yet
it really
it's like such a pivotal thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed. It's a fabulous film that should be really talked about more, and just a visually stunning film. And it unfortunately is not available on any kind of home video format in the United States. The problem is like anything without a monster, this like a lot of companies are like afraid to release because it's not going to be profitable, because also Toho, they demand like Hollywood grade prices for the films if you want to license them. So there's like no way to license Submersion of Japan and have it really make a lot of money. Yeah.
That's a real damn shame.
Yeah. But you can always, if you're resourceful, you can just import the Blu-ray from Japan and then sync subtitles to it.
Yeah, I mean that is the legal way to do it for sure. But yeah, for anybody in the chat who hasn't seen this, be resourceful, like Jules said, and try to find this movie. It's one that I've talked about before previously, but it's just a real impressive feat of tokusatsu. It really just goes to show that this whole thing, like, well, it's always so cheap, is you can throw that right out the window and shove it up where. Because like when these guys are given the time and the budget, holy heck, it's just masterful. It's just masterful. What was sorry, hold on. There we go. What was your favorite decade to kind of, or year, if you want to break it down by year, to kind of research and stuff? Because I mean, you really, again, you break it down year by year. You go through the movies, you go through the televisions, the larger events that were happening, with the just the cinema industry in general, how that affected things, like, was there any particular one that I'll make it twofold. What was your favorite year to cover, and what was the one that was most surprising to you in terms of what you learned?
Really, so my favorite period to cover, I don't know if I have a favorite year to cover. Maybe of all the chapters, the one I'm most proud of might be, I have to think, but I kind of enjoyed sort of almost in a contrarian sort of fashion. I most enjoyed, the 1970s. I actually really enjoyed, covering the 1970s because especially when it came to Tokusatsu TV, it was not like that dark of an age. It was really just like a dark age for Godzilla, and to some degree for Ultraman a little bit too, because with like Ultraman Taro and Ultraman
Yeah.
um, 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 Leo, the show definitely made a lot of poor creative choices with those two programs. But in terms of a lot of other films, I mean, there is a ton of good 70s films. Obviously, there's Submersion of Japan. There's Prophecies of Nostradamus, which I can just tell from looking at it, on the old VHS quality bootleg of the Japanese version. That's really the only way that anyone can see that film. It's a visually gorgeous film, and it bums me out that I may never get to see it in HD or 4K. It's a film that I'd really like to I'd settle for them to snip out a few of the most offensive bits because I just want to see the entire film in some sort of high resolution format.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be really great.
Yeah. And then even some of the 70s war movies Battle of Okinawa, which is Hideaki Anno's favorite film of all time. Apparently he's seen it 100 times. And probably more by now, because I think he said he had seen it 100 times in the 1990s, so he's probably seen it 200 times by now. And that's really the only movie that Hihachi Okamoto, who's one of my favorite directors, ever made that has any kind of tokusatsu contributions, because he actually hated tokusatsu, so he was not that happy to use
Right.
miniature shots in that film. But I think Toho sort of made him do it. And then also a really good 1970s film is Zero Pilot, which features the first effects director job of Koichi Kawakita, who just does a fabulous job. He had a lot of sort of engineering skills. As a filmmaker, he loved his mechanical creation. So he really takes the Mitsubishi Zero to heart in that film. With his with the radio controlled models that he used, and then just the shows. There's a lot of really good 1970s shows as well. I mean, the original Kamen Rider in its first 13 episodes. It's first sort of its first cycle before Hiroshi Fujioka got injured. It's a fabulous show that just really feels quintessential to Ishinomori's vision for the franchise. And Spectre Man is amazing. Mirror Man is great. Inazu Man is a lot of fun. Zubat's a lot of fun. There's the 1970s Tokusatsu is surprisingly just it's a surprising amount of fun. It's very entertaining, even if sometimes the production values weren't as good as the peak in the 1960s.
Right.
And as far as the development of TV, it was actually a pivotal thing.
Yeah, and that's something I was reading, the 1975 chapter before we started this. But it's funny how at the beginning of the 70s you have, Godzilla's still going on, limping along, Ultraman's still kind of limping along, Kamen Rider's happening. And when I think it was, you said Stronger, Kamen Rider's Stronger, and the Ultraman show at the time went off the air for a little bit, but then that gave rise to Sentai, And then that was its own thing, Go Ranger. So like, when oftentimes I think it's because a lot of us, I can speak for myself here, but I think others have followed this path where it's like you learn about the history of this stuff through, like I said, the Godzilla works, and it's always like, oh, the 1970s are so horrible and stuff. But while, like you just mentioned, it was dark for Godzilla and a little bit of Ultraman, but yet there's a whole plethora of shows and properties that are just like popping up because of this. And if one falls, another equally popular one, just jumps right back up. It's really kind of incredible.
Yeah, and there was a lot of influence from like the anime industry as well. In fact, there's always been a close association between like the anime and the tokusatsu industries. Kenzo Masaoka, who was like really one of anime's very first pioneers, he made the first anime talkie, The World of Power and Women. And he was actually close friends with Eiji Tsuburaya, and he worked on Princess Kaguya in 1935. And so he and like that really almost kind of parallels, like you kind of have like the modern friendship between Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi, who are just such pivotal anime and tokusatsu figures. But anyway, to sort of get back to like the 70s, like you had an occult boom that was influenced by Devilman and The Exorcist, and then you also had a space sci-fi boom, which was influenced not only by Star Wars but by Space Battleship Yamato as well. Yeah. So that very much what was and also the yokai boom came up through the popularity of the manga and anime Gege no Kitaro, and that was very influential on the yokai monsters films from Gaie. But to sort of get back to the 70s, I don't even think it was that dark of a period for Godzilla, because I mean, like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, 74 is like, I think, one of the better entries, if anything.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and it's a lot of people, I think, much like when we were talking about Nakano earlier, I think a lot of the 70s movies are being reevaluated. I mean, Toho, for the past couple of years, they did the 50th anniversary of Hedorah. They're doing the 50th anniversary of Gigan. Yeah. I'm going to laugh if they do Megalon, since they seem so... Yeah, they seem so against the inclusion of Jet Jaguar in like Godzilla Singular Point. So, but if they're actually just going to embrace that, it's going to be fantastic. Yeah, I mean, these films have merits and stuff, but it's just like when you're looking at it from the metric level of ticket sales or budgets and that kind of thing. I mean, everything's just so poor, even comparatively to how it was like 10 years prior. But again, Tokusatsu thrives around that time in different areas,
Yeah, exactly. And like the more like sort of low budget, TV based like Tokusatsu actually thrive. Like the weird thing with the 1970s, like, well, Toho had to like very much slash, production of like a lot of films, and they had to like, lower their budgets. Toei, by contrast, they thrived, and they like made very like sort of grindhouse styled films almost. You have like the Yakuza films from like Sadao Nakajima and Kinji Fukasaku. You have all these like Pinku Eiga films and these exploitation film by like Norifumi Suzuki or Teruo Ishii. There's and some of that does definitely intersect with Tokusatsu. Like you have like the 1979 remake of Hell, the Inferno, which was influenced by the cult film. But anyway, to answer your second question, like what was the most interesting to like research, like the most surprising thing like that I found, it probably I mean it's like a bit of a can of like worms, but like some of what I found out during like the wartime years is like stuff that's only like known in Japan. That's not that it's not all like good,
Right.
Especially like as far as like Toho is concerned. Yeah, there were definitely some. They were at the risk of sounding pedantic, they were a lot like the Nazis in like the production of propaganda. In fact, Subarai, his first destruction sequence is in a Nazi co-production called the Daughter of the Samurai, or A New Earth. It ends with Mount Mahara erupting, and that's like Subarai's first destruction sequence. But
Wow.
so yeah, there's some sort of surprising things where you kind of find out that like, or at least I found out that there were sort of some there's sort of a dark history. I mean, film itself has a pretty dark history. A lot of filmmaking technique and innovation came out of propaganda.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and it's every society has its, dark chapters. So, it's not entirely, too surprising, but it is interesting. Just a reminder, everybody in the chat, please, if you have any questions relating to Godfathers of Tokusatsu Volume 1, or Jules is just research, or, about his other books, please ask. We got plenty of time to ask those questions. I also wanted to ask you, do you want to go through the other pictures that you had sent over?
Sure.
Okay, let me just get that back up. There we go. Whoops. If I can actually... Oh, we'll get it eventually, Jules. I promise. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a boomer when it comes to tech. So, who is this strapping young man?
Yep. One of my favorite pictures of Teruyoshi Nakano from the set of The War in Space.
Yeah. That, like I said, that guy, so underrated. Like
Really?
I said, I'm really, really glad that you talk about him so much. Just want to point out my buddy Mike Dent isn't in the house.
Hey.
Mention like the best Tokusatsu channel you're gonna find here on YouTube. But he just said this reminds me I still need to pick up a copy. Yes, you do. Yes, you do, Mike. Most comprehensive history of Tokusatsu written in the English language. Let's go. What do we got? We got that one. Is this a ticket counter?
That's like a ticket booth. That's like a lobby display for Daiei's double feature of Gamera versus Baragon and Majin, which was really the first double feature of like two Tokusatsu films in Japan. Like at Toho, it was considered impossible to do a double feature of two special effects movies, particularly two monster films, because that would mean that Eiji Tsuburaya would have to make two films at once. Whereas with Daiei, they were more privileged in that they had two different. Actually, they had several special effects directors, so they and they had two different branches, so they were able to release a double feature of two monster movies.
How do you feel about the Dai Machine films?
I adore them. They are just like pretty much masterpieces of like cinema. Yoshiyuki Kuroda, who is their special effects director, he's a very like underrated figure. I think. I feel like Shinji Higuchi got a lot of his style from him because like if you watch Kuroda's special effects work in like the Majin and Yokai films, you'll see that it's full of like uh, uh, particles in the air. Him and his director of photography, Fujio Morita, they were absolutely obsessed with like just putting as many like particles in the air as they could at all times, and that like that's an obsession that like Shinji Higuchi really has. That sort of like reminds me of like Ridley Scott a little bit,
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Paul agrees with you, by the way, about that machine. It was light years better than the Showa era Gamera.
Yeah, I largely agree there. I mean, I like a few of, particularly I like Gamera versus Giaos. Yeah, I think Giaos is a pretty darn good film with some surprisingly good special effects work from like Noriaki Yuasa. It's a surprisingly probably Yuasa's best film, but the rest of the Gamera films, the Majin films are almost always better.
I would agree with that. I really like Gauss. I am admittedly a fan of Showa Gamera. Like I'll watch those movies just for fun, but Gauss I think probably is one of my favorites. And I actually discovered that as an adult. Didn't grow up with it, and as an adult, I think there's actually some pretty fun things about it.
Yeah.
Covered that one. What's this?
So that is, I believe it's on the set of The Last War, which is, along with Submersion of Japan, that is like one of the best special effects films that Toho ever produced easily. Like Submersion of Japan, its stock footage was used for decades. I mean, Koichi Kawakita used some of it in Godzilla vs. Destroyer. That's how much influence that this film had, and that's sort of like the Tsuburaya unit, shooting like a miniature.
That's awesome. I love that. So we got some warplane props here.
Yeah. So that one thing with the war movies is that in Japan they're considered bona fide tokusatsu films. Whereas in the West and stateside, like they're a little bit more sort of separate. They like not a lot of Godzilla fans have like seen like The War at Sea from Hawaii to Melee or Storm of the Pacific or Attack Squadron, but they're all like really good films. Like I have a particular love for like the war films, and so I included them because they're absolutely pivotal in the careers of many of these directors. And I love them because they kind of like feel like this really weird place where like the childhood like dreamlike nostalgia of tokusatsu meets the harshness of like real world history.
Yeah. Nice coming here from Jikori Gio. Well, I just screwed up that name. Jiko Rijo. Cool to see you interviewing Mr. Carroza. I'm saying your last name right?
Yep.
Okay. I just screwed up names over here. But he says that he's looking forward to your Hideaki Anno biography. Is that a project you got going on?
Oh yeah. That's something. It's probably not going to come out for like a couple of years, but that is a serious project. Like I am writing. I mean, technically, it's not the first like English language biography of Anno because they released an English language book with his exhibition.
Yeah.
But this is the first unofficial biography of Hideaki Anno, and it's going to cover all of his work in both anime and live action, and something of his rather, shall we say, troubled personal life as well. So it's going to be a little bit it's going to be a little bit in some ways similar to Steve and Ed's Honda book, but about a much more troubled Japanese pop culture luminary and creator.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that exhibition book that you just mentioned, for those in the chat, if you can find it for a decent price, it is completely worth picking up. I think the prices are kind of shooting up on it because I think they're getting a little bit more rare because I think the exhibition might be winding down. Am I wrong about that?
I think it's it might be over. I'm not sure if they're if it's over in Japan, maybe I'm not sure if they ended the Anno one and now they're doing the Yasuki and Ue one. But
yes. Actually, I was just reminded. I think it moved from Tokyo to Osaka now. So I think it's there, but I have no idea if it's going anywhere else or if that's kind of its last thing right there. We also got Doomzilla, who says that he would very much like to read that biography. So you got one customer there.
Yeah.
And we got a cool question. Have either of you seen Sayonara Jupiter? I watched it last night for the first time. Wasn't very good, but I like the film's tragic love story model work and the ending theme, Voyager. I can tell you personally, I have not seen that. What about you?
I have. Actually, that's another very influential tokusatsu film. I've already covered it in volume 2. I actually it's kind of funny because I just wrote about it for volume 2.
Yes.
It was basically a creative disaster and box office bomb that was Japan's equivalent to Ishtar or Heaven's Gate. It was that bad. It is really just it's 2.5 hours long. It's loaded with just ridiculous scenes of hippies partying at an Okinawa beach. They're this hippie death cult who are trying to sabotage this world-saving Jupiter solarization project. It's just such a ridiculous movie, but the special effects by Koichi Kawakita are just stunning. It was actually it wasn't great for his career, but that film does prove him as a good special effects director. Whereas Koji Hashimoto, its main director, that film pretty much single-handedly destroyed his career, and even directing the return of Godzilla afterwards, that could not save his career. Sayonara Jupiter did so much damage to it. But the special effects that it employed, the special effects techniques and the miniature shooting were very revolutionary for the Japanese film industry in particular. Kawakita did a lot of research into how people Douglas Trumbull and John Dykstra did things. He used a very similar motion control camera to shoot the special effects sequences by Jupiter. Yeah.
All this talk of spaceships, and you just mentioned Douglas Trumbull, and it makes me want to go watch Silent Running again.
Oh yeah.
It's great. Didn't Trumbull pass away not too recently?
Yeah. He passed away earlier this year.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, everything just feels like it was a million years ago. But that's another trailblazer right there who really did some amazing stuff. Yeah, and Mike agreed with you about Sayonara Jupiter. It's a movie that has its head so far up its own bleep that it comes back around to being hilariously bad.
Yeah, I largely agree there, though. I kind of don't even get that pleasure from it because it's just too long. Like if it was an hour and a half, it would be like ironically, funny. That there's just like this. There's like this one like interstellar sex scene um, that is just like the most ridiculous thing in like a Toho film. There are moments in that movie that are just cringeworthy. Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried to avoid it best I can, and I think I'm going to continue to do that. Maybe see like a best of compilation if it's flying out there of just the special effects sequences.
Yeah, or just it's a movie I'd recommend you just fast forward through the majority of it and just watch the special effects scenes. Yeah.
I was going to say this question for last, but I mean this is pretty good. When can we expect the second book, and what time period will it cover?
So the second book, hopefully it'll be out in March. That's sort of the release date. I'm going to try to release it pretty much the same week Shin Kamen Rider hits, in Japan.
Nice.
So it'll probably be out the same week Shin Kamen Rider hits. And it's going to cover pretty much everything from 1980 to the present. It's going to end with sort of an appraisal of Shin Ultraman, and also some coverage of like sort of one of my favorite contemporary tokusatsu creators, Daisuke Sato, who made Howl from Beyond the Fog.
Yeah,
it's going to cover Howl from Beyond the Fog, and also possibly some of the production of his next movie, Brush of the Gods, which looks incredible. His career is one that I really think is like worth watching.
Yeah, no, Brush of the Gods looks interesting. I'm very much looking forward to that second volume. Is it going to be of similar length to volume 1?
I imagine so. I mean, it's 60 pages already. So, yeah.
That's so cool. Let's jump back to this because I think there's still a few more pictures that we have to go through here. What are we looking at here? Well, actually, I know what this is, but can you explain? This is a really cool picture, actually, but can you explain exactly what we're looking at here?
So Tsuburaya's unit, he didn't. He not only directed the special effects sequences in a lot of Toho films, but he created pretty much all of the Toho logos from like the wartime period to 1965. And the way that they did it, like they put like painting and decals on glass, and then they'd like spin the glass to get that sun effect.
Yeah. This is a beautiful photo. I saw either this one or one similar a couple of years ago, and I'm just like, that is insane. It's not something you see floating around a whole lot, but that's really, really neat. Let's go back. Who are these gentlemen? I think I know who they are, but who do we got?
So that's this Japanese child actor named, I believe her name is Tomoko Matsushima, and she's visiting the set of Rodan right there. And Ishiro Honda and Eiji Tsuburaya are allowing her to handle one of Yasuyuki Inoue's models.
That's the one that actually goes flying off the rails, right? In Rodan?
That's probably the one, yeah. One of them. Yeah, and I mean, that would be like my dream. Like as a kid, that would have been like my dream to go to like a tokusatsu stand.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is going to sound really look, I love the fact that I was born in the United States. I love the United States and all this stuff. But part of me, even though it would be impossible, part of me wishes I grew up in Japan during, because I was born in '85, right? And which was like the rise of the Heisei era. To be able to like grow up in that, to grow up alongside that, or even meeting people who were able to grow up during the time of like the Showa era and when these things were coming out and stuff. It's just time periods that we're just never going to be able to live through something similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's like sort of. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood the other night in a 70 millimeter print.
Nice.
And that was sort of my impression from like the entire film, like just like that was sort of what was kind of like going through my head for the entire film. Like this is like a bygone age that we're like never going to be able to experience again.
Yeah. It's time marches on, I guess.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's this from?
So that Tsuburaya doing he's referring to storyboards for the production of Battle in Outer Space, and with both anime and tokusatsu, a big part of the medium is storyboarding everything ahead of time.
They came out with a book maybe like 4 or 5 years ago that had storyboards from like if I remember right, it was like Godzilla, Mothra, the Mysterians. Do you know what book I'm talking about?
I think I may have heard of it, but I mean that sounds like a must-own,
Yeah, no, it's a great read. I don't want to go searching for it because I'm going to be just the whole time on my bookshelf. But yeah, no, the storyboards are always super fun to look through, and there's a couple of like books out there that have kept that art form alive, so that's always fun.
Yeah, and have you you've seen Shinji Higuchi's storyboards, right?
Yes. Yeah.
He's like a master at them. His look like manga panels. They're just amazing.
Yeah. No, it's some really cool stuff. I love all of those kinds of behind the scenes things. Pre-production oddly is probably my favorite part to talk about these things. Like when everything is coming together and how it comes together. Like for some reason, I'm like most fascinated with that most of all. So it's really cool.
It is pretty much like for me. It's definitely like like one of the most fun parts of filmmaking is just like pulling everything.
Yeah. Do you have like when you were doing? Granted, when you're talking about so many of these things, it's not like you're giving. I mean, you give a very good history, but it's not like you're going every single detail of say like pre, pro, and post. But do you have like a favorite? I guess of those three, is there a favorite section of that you find particularly interesting when you're talking about these films or researching these films?
The shoots usually are the most entertaining to like write about. The shoots are typically the most entertaining to like write about, and also like how they made the monsters too is often like a lot of like fun, to write about, and also like how they just like their intricate miniature construction techniques, which you sort of see right there. So that's actually a picture of them building a miniaturized Pearl Harbor during the war, for the war at sea from Hawaii to Melee, which was a really groundbreaking film in Japan, even though it was kind of a hate-filled piece of fascist propaganda, like celebrating Pearl Harbor. It was also a very groundbreaking film, and it made Tsuburaya into a special effects superstar. And have you seen any of the sequences in the war at sea, particularly the Pearl Harbor attack?
I got to be completely honest with you. I have not. I have been pestered over the past several years that I should, by people who are like, dude, like it's pretty incredible. But no, I have not.
But yeah, it's definitely it's the propaganda movies are like I actually unlike a lot of other scholars, like I actually like watched these films, and they were I mean Tsuburaya felt a lot of guilt about them because he realized like after the war that they were kind of used to like get kids to like sign up to be like kamikaze.
Yeah.
Like they were kind of like and so he felt a lot of like and I suspect that was part of why the Americans targeted him as well was sort of because like they saw these films as having been very socially harmful, but it's pretty impressive the way that they constructed like Pearl Harbor, going entirely on really just like two things. They found some pictures in like smuggled in like magazines and newspapers from America, which they based like some of the models off of, and also they used like some of the Imperial Air Force's battle plans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, Tsuburaya's first major apprentice was actually Tomio Sagisu, who would go on to found P Productions.
Yeah.
And he would often act as a liaison, like he would deal with the imperial military officials for Tsuburaya, because Tsuburaya would kind of clash a little bit with the imperial army officials, because like he wanted to see a lot of like classified images and information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was the last one. Look at that. We hit just an hour too. That was like almost like perfect. Is there anything else you would like to cover before we wrap this up? I really thank you for coming on here and talking about this.
I mean, and thank you for having me. Just keep enjoying Japanese special effects films, because they're awesome and a lot of fun, and they're really very distinctive and interesting pieces of cinema that are I think dear to like the hearts of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I the whole sort of like mission statement of these books is just to kind of print in English really aspects of the story that are just like not like known much.
Yeah.
Japanese.
Yeah. I mean, when I say this, it's going to sound like I'm kissing your butt, but I really thank you for fighting the good fight and keeping this stuff alive, because it's something that not a lot of people do out there. I'm a huge proponent of trying to, gather the best, information possible, but there are a lot of people out there, whether it's fellow content creators on something like YouTube or whatever, where, opinions and assumptions are then made to be facts. You know what I mean? And there are certain individuals, companies even, that don't really care about whether or not it's right. You know what I mean? Like if they're giving out wrong information, they're just like, oh, whatever, like they can't be bothered with it.
Yeah.
So the fact that, you come up with 500 plus pages of the history of this genre, as somebody who loves this stuff, I thank you for the work that you do and that you're continuing to do. With volume 2, I will definitely be, ordering that. I am sure that we will definitely be having you back on here when that comes out.
Thank you.
So, yeah, everybody in the chat, the book is Godfathers of Tokusatsu, Volume 1. Go and get it. It is good stuff. It's available in both softback and hardback over on Amazon.com. It's available on Kindle too, right?
Yep.
There you go. You don't want to get a physical copy. Get it digitally speaking. You know what I mean? But go support Jules. This book is amazing. And I've already referenced. I think I was telling you about this. I referenced it for I think it was the special effects of Shin Ultraman video. Like I was going through your Ultraman chapter and just gleaming these really awesome facts and stuff in there that I don't think I was finding anywhere else. Even in like the AJ Tsuburaya biography that's out there. So like it was said before, people, like you're going to find stuff in here that isn't just, known wherever. You're not going to be able to just go over to Wikizilla or Wikipedia and just like type it in and be like, oh yeah, well I know this, so. But yeah, man, thanks a lot for coming on here. Is there any social accounts or anything you'd like to plug that people can follow you at?
So I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Godzilla GIFs, and like the name that I use is Dr. Gory. Yeah, I'm Dr. Gory on Twitter. That's like pretty much one of my favorite villains in like the entire tokusatsu media is Space Ape Man, Dr. Gory.
Right.
Yeah. I really wish they would make some kind of modern reboot of Spectre Man so we could see him done with modern prosthetics with very high quality Rick Baker
right
quality prosthetics.
Oh man, that'd be so cool. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, we can only hope. Maybe it might happen, or maybe we might need to open up like some multiverse gateway and go search that or something.
I am planning to get into film producing. That's something that I'm kind of planning to get into down the road. And one project I really would like to produce is a tokusatsu film that's made pretty much in the traditional style with two directors. I would really like to see that come back, because they haven't really made a two-director tokusatsu film in a long time. I mean, Brush of the Gods does have two directors, but they haven't really made a two-director tokusatsu movie really since Shin Godzilla, and even Shin Godzilla was not totally done in that traditional style. I would really love to do a tokusatsu film with a director and a special effects director, and and just sort of see what kind of film they come up with. It'd
be amazing. Yeah, best of luck in that regard, because that could be a really cool effort if you can get that off the ground, for sure.
Thank you.
All right, guys, go buy the book. Again, you can get it here without picking up 1,000 other things. Go get the book. Volume 1, Godfathers of Tokusatsu. Really great read. You're not going to find one bigger that covers this in the English language. It's amazing. Go buy it. And Jules, again, thank you for coming on. And we'll see you all very soon. I think we're going to have another stream by this weekend. And lots of cool stuff after that. So we will take care, and we'll see you later, guys. Bye.